This webinar will be recorded, so we will share it for everyone that's registered. We will share the recording to you. It will also be up on our YouTube channel, and then we'll be sharing it in our weekly wrap the first week of June on Friday, the 7th of June. Okay, I think we are ready to go. Let's kick off. So yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Helen Mussard, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for IAB Europe. I'm delighted to be hosting this series of webinars that we've been running as part of our work plan for IAB Europe's Brand Advertising Committee. In February, we released our updated guide to quality, and that was kind of the vehicle that has launched this webinar series. The guide, you can see there's a little QR code, so that if you haven't already downloaded it or looked at it, please do. But it was written by members of the committee, and they looked at all of the different components to what really constitutes quality in digital advertising. So within there are sections on ad fraud, brand safety, creative execution, user engagement, and of course, viewability. And then for the latest addition to this guide that we've done, we've included some sustainability best practices where we worked with our Sustainability Standards Committee. So it's definitely worth a read. But if you don't have time to read it, no fear, because this is why we're doing these webinars, where we can actually bring together experts to talk about these different components. So today we will be looking at ad fraud, and then we have a host of other ones that will be coming up over the next couple of months. And I am delighted to introduce the panel that we have for today. First of all, we've got Ryan Martin, who is, as well as being the head of marketing solutions for EU and TikTok, he is the chair of our brand advertising committee, so is the one that really keeps us on track and accountability and accountable for all of the work and the great outputs that we do. So thank you very much, Ryan. So with that, just a bit of housekeeping. As I said, we are recording this webinar because we're live. We would love to have any questions that you may have for today's session. So at the end of the panel discussion, you get the chance to pose any questions you may have. You can put those into the Q&A box at the bottom, and then Ryan will ask those to the panelists. So Ryan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Helen, and good morning, everybody. I hope you are well and the sun is shining wherever you are. I'm really looking forward to getting into this webinar this morning. Yeah, ad fraud is a key topic that we discuss a lot as the Brand Advertising Committee, and I'm really excited to have two of our key members of that committee here to discuss it with you today. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. When we had the briefing call a couple of weeks ago, both Oliver and Annika were like, well, there's so much to say, and they were like, we need to spend more time together connecting and working out all the things we can discuss. So it's great for me. I'm going to really enjoy being part of this conversation, hearing what they have to say, and guiding them through this discussion. As Helen said, please do use the Q&A functionality and get any questions you have in. But before we kick off, I'd love just for you guys to introduce yourselves briefly. So Annika, I'll let you introduce yourself to the audience first.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I'm Annika Geiger. I'm brand direct lead at Magnite. So I manage our brand direct business across EMEA, so working really closely with global advertiser on their like omni-channel campaign setup, SPO, and topics like that.
Wonderful, thank you. And Oliver.
Hi, and nice to meet you all. So my name is Oliver Saison. I'm leading the market quality team at the Verve Group with a goal to maximize the monetization across supply and demand by making a clean and transparent marketplace, and all in all, to make media better.
Nice, a lovely ambition to make media better, and that's what we all want to do here. Is IAB Europe is to raise the standard of advertising across the industry and help people see the successes of it even more so. So I guess let's start really nice and broad in general. We know ad fraud is something that people talk a lot about. It can sometimes be a bit of an overwhelming topic, a bit confusing. I guess, Annika, from you, could you outline some of the key components of ad fraud and what sort of impact it really has on digital advertising?
Yeah, absolutely. And what a question as well, because it's such a broad topic. I guess starting with the impact or putting this all into context, in the end of last year, the ANA published a report on media quality. And in that report, they said that amongst 88 billion of ad spend on the open web, 22 billion of that are unproductive or wasted, which means that 1 in every 4 ad dollars is actually wasted. And then they also, I mean, there's several factors contributing to that, one of which being IVT. So they also looked into, amongst all of these impressions, what's the percentage of IVT? And they found it's 0.7 to 3.5%, which in the light of like the overall global media investment is actually quite a big sum of money. And the IAS, then they looked into IVT as well, more specifically in EMEA. And it's quite an interesting report because they then looked into, so looking at campaigns optimized or controlled for IVT versus those that are not, what's the main difference? And they found that if we control for IVT, we can expect an average IVT rate of like 1%, versus if we don't do that, we're between 8 to 10%. So then here it already becomes quite clear what's the impact of IVT. But then also, why do we need to put in the work, do our due diligence? Because there's a lot of money on the line. And I think it was Forrester that predicts that the industry stands to lose 11 billion in ad fraud this year, which means that IVT remains, a serious concern for marketeers. So that's just kind of to outline where we're at, what's the context. If we're talking about IVT, so coming to the components part of it, I guess we can put it in 2 main categories. We often talk about general IVT and sophisticated IVT. General IVT being everything that might be fraudulent, but also not, like bots, spider crawlers, which could be created by fraudsters, kind of trying to mimic users. But then also there are normal components of the internet. So, Google uses spiders and bots to crawl web pages to then give us Google search results. Now, it could be that an ad is served to a bot like that, which shouldn't happen. Advertisers shouldn't be paying money for it. But then ultimately, this is not fraudulent activity. It's just happening. Whereas talking about sophisticated IVT, this is really where, malware and hijacking domains and sites comes in. So this is the more advanced the more advanced components of IVT that we really need to look into and need to have processes in place to control for that. And for those on the call that might not be as familiar with, so what does this IVT look like in the real life? Let me give you a couple of examples. Because we're talking about, click farms, for instance, which is basically workers in an office, like repeatedly clicking on ads to inflate metrics. And we have ad stacking, which is just like loads of different ads being served on top of each other. Only the first one is viewable, but all the rest are reported as viewable. So again, this is like advertisers shouldn't pay money for that. Now, going to examples on the more sophisticated end of the scale, there is domain spoofing, which is something we've just recently seen with Forbes, which is basically fraudsters misrepresenting lower quality inventory for premium domains. So what we saw with fraud and with Forbes is that it was found they had a sub website which was basically an MFA, so made for advertising website with an overwhelmingly amount of ads on it. So a lot of advertisers thought they were advertising across Forbes content when really they ended up on that site, which was, obviously a big topic for us in the industry. And then another very sophisticated ad fraud scheme that was unveiled a couple of years ago by Oracle was DrainerBot, which was basically users downloading apps from the App Store, and they would come with a piece of code that in the background would just play video ads over and over again, whether the phone was on or off or in use or not. These ads were just, being constantly served, which means that advertisers lost loads of money. Users did as well because they had increased data charges and would also, drain their phone battery. So here we can really see the scale of sophistication across IVT tactics. And then I guess just to, summarize that, the main impact is financial loss, of course, decreased return on investment, return on ad spend, but also skewed, campaign results or performance analytics. Because when we look at our reporting in the end of a campaign, and all of the impressions were not served to actually humans, but for bots, then how can we really tell if this campaign was successful or not? So just to very briefly outline is kind of where we stand and different components within ad fraud we look at.
Amazing. Some of the numbers you revealed off the bat there at the top really show how big a I guess an opportunity for the fraudster is, it's like, there's some really big numbers in there. And I think, talking about the level of complexity and the way that this kind of fraud is happening is really insightful, because I guess, we sit in an industry, and obviously technological developments are normally seen as a benefit to us because we can improve our targeting, improve our measurement. But I guess lots of these tools are also being used by fraudsters to capture a slice of that pot of money. I guess, Oliver, I'll come to you. So in your opinion, of these challenges that Anik has just talked about, what would you say are some of the most pressing challenges that we have in combating ad fraud today? And I guess, kind of diving into that a bit, what strategies do you recommend for overcoming them?
What a question. So what I can say is that ad fraud is on the rise as advertisers are continuing to allocate their ad spend to new technologies such as like podcasts, CTV, and emerging social platforms, right? You have like Twitch, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, TikTok, and so on. And fraudsters are actually very quick to exploit these opportunities and increase their tactics, right? To do fraud, to do scam. And this is basically the most pressing challenge in this industry, right? They come up with new tactics while the tech is evolving, right? So these are fraudsters right now are clever and use AI to make bots which are behaving and look like real persons even, and they spoof CTV devices, they spoof every device out there, even smart refrigerators that can also send ad traffic. Just to give an example, right? But back to today's challenges. Today's challenges are multifaceted. So on the one side, you have these bots that are a serious problem right now, where all stakeholders actually need to take measures. And on the other side, we are also facing the challenge of fraud as a service, like human workers, like paid human traffic, also farm pandemics, inflating click farms, malware-infected CTV devices nowadays. And these fraudsters, of course, utilize generative AI, right? They're scaling their fraud business by spamming this industry and market with fake supply, fake inventory, MFAs, fake identities, fake user accounts on TikTok, and also faking users and content creators, right? So we even come to this point as of now that fraudsters are even utilizing fraud GPT, right? Which is specialized in cybercrime. It's no joke. It's you can look it up and it's true. So to overcome these challenges, we will combat fraud also with the same weapons they use, right? We will use advanced technology, we will use AI, and we will use human oversight. I think this is like one key point that I need to highlight as well in this webinar. For example, at the Verve, we are committed to fight fraud by investing into AI, the subset of it, of course, machine learning and procedures, as well human logic, right? In the end, or what stands GPT for? GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformation. And AI just knows this, what you have been teaching it to know. And the human makes the difference. It really actually makes the dent, because we are understanding the context of it all, and we do understand that we have to make sure or ensure that the advertisers have their return of ad spend, right? This is something that the AI maybe does not know. And of course, we combat it by vetting all of our partners, work with trusted partners, and understand the supply that we're working with, all the inventories, making even sniffing tests or something like that. And combining that all with transparency initiatives by the IAB, like ads.txt, abads.txt, blockchain technology like S-Chain, right? We are ensuring to protect our advertisers and mitigate the fraud.
Nice. I mean, it's interesting you talk about like the way that ad fraud techniques are evolving, and it's great that we're also using those same techniques to kind of stay ahead of it. And I think your point around the transparency and the quality of advertising, it's one of those tried and tested thoughts that we often forget about, or certainly in advertising more broadly, it's a really important thing. And then when working digitally, often it becomes a bit of a race to the bottom of CPMs, but it's about thinking and remembering the importance of quality and the transparency throughout the value chain. I guess when you talk about that, you touched on CTV, you touched on even fridges being potential targets of fraudulent behaviour. I'm guessing does the type of fraud differ across channels, and do you see any particular channels attracting more types of fraud? And I guess within that, do detection approaches with different channels differ? Annika, maybe one for you.
Yeah, I mean that's a really important question for us because we are an omni-channel platform. So when I work with my brand clients, like we set up omni-channel campaigns for them. So we're consistently looking into, are there differences? I mean, to be honest, I feel like bad actors target every single format. However, and this goes back to what Oliver already mentioned before, we do think that the more emerging formats and channels like out-of-home, audio, CTV are more susceptible to it because there's more media investment going towards them. And especially like looking at CTV has been booming over the last couple of years. It's part of every or most media plans now. So there is more budget being allocated to it. So where the money goes, the fraud goes as well. And if we stay on the CTV example, in that specific environment, it's actually quite hard to fight ad fraud because it's a very fragmented ecosystem. So we have loads of different channels, devices, apps, but it's also an ecosystem that uses server-side ad insertion, so SSIE, for to kind of embed the ad into the stream, the video stream content. And server-side ad insertion hides where the ad request comes from, which means, and that's very specific case, of course, then it's a bit more difficult to unveil ad fraud where it's at play. To give you a couple more examples of like what ad fraud looks like in CTV, it's we have a very similar fraud against all different categories, but then adjusted for the environment. So we have server-side ad insertion fraud, which means a fraudster actually pretends to be a server and creates a lot of fake traffic. We have CTV app fraud as well. So this is just somebody pretending or creating an app that looks like CTV, or spoofing exists in CTV as well, which means that a device is manipulated or device ID is manipulated in a way that it looks like it's a CTV device, when in reality it's not. So we can see similarities, really, these components across IVT, we see them popping up across all formats, but then, slightly adjusted. When it comes to combating CTV, ad fraud, especially when it comes to CTV, it's also, Oliver, you mentioned this already, we have to do our due diligence and do rigorous vetting of partners we work with. So what that means for us, because we're really, really strong when it comes to CTV, is that we work super closely with every single publisher, every single media owner and inventory source we onboard onto our platform to make sure that whatever enters the platform is fraud free, and then also controlled for high viewability. It's all brand safe, just to ensure that whatever our clients buy is of high inventory quality. So the key, I think, is really that very close collaboration with publishers, but then having the right processes in place from the get-go to make sure we remove that fraudulent activity from the traffic and just our marketplace. And I think when it comes to agencies and brands, I think what my recommendation really is for them, I mean, obviously it's great if you have your own verification partners in place, but then just make sure you ask your tech partners the right questions, the hard questions. So talk to your DSP and SSP partners, make sure they have these processes in place, they're certified for IVT, and they just really have an honest conversation around how they ensure high media quality, because this just provides a really good basis to then, set up the campaigns and then set them up for success as well.
And just to dig into that a little bit, you mentioned about the hard conversations, the hard questions. What should folks on this webinar maybe kind of learning more about ad fraud? What are some of the questions that you would advise people to be asking to help them leave here with some real clear action points?
Well, I think it's really, what are you certified, industry certified? What industry bodies do you work with? What are your processes to proactively identify fraud, but also what's your vetting process when you onboard inventory? So I think it's really asking about the basic factors of like, are you looking into this? Are you certified? Can we tell that you're taking this seriously? And then looking at every point of the supply chain, what are you doing to ensure quality from the get-go, but then also while campaigns are live, how are you helping in monitoring the traffic and identifying anomalies where they might come up?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so I guess just digging into a bit about what it is that you're being sold in on, or what it is that they're offering, and again taking that journey through the value chain. And I guess when we talk about that, like this is where things like standardization and industry certification can become a really valuable tool. So, what role can data analytics play in ensuring the effectiveness of such certifications in mitigating ad fraud?
I think it's very, very important to be like when we're talking about industry certifications, that just provides a benchmark for individuals and organizations that kind of show they possess a certain level of expertise, knowledge, experience to be combating fraud and to be creating a marketplace of high inventory quality. And data analytics is at the core of it, right? Because if we don't have those systems in place, we cannot monitor our marketplaces. We cannot monitor our traffic and identify anomalies. And I think it's important to have very advanced data analytics as well that then enable you to monitor campaigns in real time. So while it's happening, we can jump in, make a change, optimize it, and remove inventory that might be fraudulent. And I really think that both of that together, so yeah, industry certifications as well as data analytics, enable us as an industry to kind of maintain that level of integrity and security in our advertising practices. And regarding certifications, because there's several different ones out there, but all of them ultimately show that a company possesses or has processes in place that they're actively fighting against ad fraud and doing something to remove that from the bid stream altogether.
That makes, because one of my questions on that was going to be, how do we make sure that with the fraudsters constantly evolving that arsenal of tactics and techniques, how do we make sure that the certifications are up to standard and keeping pace with that? But I guess it's more of a certification of the processes and the activities that companies are taking to prevent ad fraud in its most long-term and forward-thinking way.
Yeah, but if I might just add to that, it's also, us coming together here, us working with industry bodies like the IAB and like sharing intelligence and knowledge across partners in the industry, like that's very, very important. This is how we stay proactive and fighting ad fraud. So I really think at the core of fighting ad fraud is collaboration amongst industry bodies, amongst tech partners, across publishers, because I think that just puts us ahead of the curve and enables us to just pretend a lot of the invalid traffic coming through.
Yeah, completely. I think that's it. I mean, different businesses will have different experiences from ad fraud, and if they can share those, and I think as an industry, reduction of fraud is only going to be beneficial for the industry and also for advertisers more generally as well. So I think collaboration really needs to sit at the heart of those solutions. So I think it's a really great point. Oliver, I guess looking ahead and thinking about the future, like what do you foresee as the evolving trends and tactics within ad fraud? How should industry stakeholders prepare to adapt their strategies to keep ahead of these fraudulent activities?
I think in this webinar, a lot of the things have been already answered, but I just can emphasize again. So, and I just refer as well to what I already said. AI is on the rise. So ad fraud is on the rise. So fraudsters will increase their use of artificial intelligence, which will require us to adapt with the risk mitigation tactics. We will also need to increase our behavioral intelligence to tackle complex fraud, to understand who the real user is, not only depending on anti-fraud vendors and displaying what is fraud, what is a bot, what is sophisticated IoT, but also utilizing advanced technology to find out who the real users are and target them. And ad fraud is also increasingly coordinated through platforms, through all various channels and exchanges, and even international borders. So we have been seeing that fraud is committed through several exchanges sometimes, right? In one platform, banner traffic has been bought, and then on another platform, it has been resold as video traffic, right? There was vast flux, a vast arbitration fraud case, and it becomes more significant. It gets much more in the next few years, and we have to adapt to all of this. As a recommendation to our stakeholders, I think that advertisers must stay abreast of their latest trends in mobile ad fraud, applying a 360-degree fraud screening approach, and utilize platforms, utilize anti-fraud vendors that are specialized in fraud detection, SIVT and GIVT, and not only the detection, but also the prevention. And then we have to have our publishers being vigilant about their ad inventory and the traffic sources they're working with. For the tech companies, they should focus on creating innovative methods for fraud detection and prevention and actively educate the industry. So working with several companies for fraud that specialize in fraud detection, I miss it a lot, being educated of what is happening around us, right? And later on you see the news, but right now there's fraud out there and we can detect it and we can solve it when we are collaborating together. So talking to advertisers, all the publishers and tech companies, right? To get things down. Again, it's a billion dollar company, billion dollar business, fraud, and they are taking a piece of the cake. I don't want to let this run forever, right? In conclusion, tackling mobile ad fraud requires a collective and proactive approach, employing all the things that we are currently embracing, like AI and machine learning. Or in other words, the digital advertising ecosystem requires collaboration and transparency.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think sometimes when you talk about ad fraud, there's always assumption, well, it's not my problem, it's somebody else's problem. And I think what's really clear is that it's a collective responsibility that we all need to be asking the right questions and holding each other to account, which is, to Annika's point, the importance of those certifications. We need to make sure that we are all tasking one another across the value chain. We need to work together as an industry to fix this, because there's nefarious organizations out there that want to take a slice of this cake, and we need to make sure that we are working together and pushing our partners to always be doing more and sharing that with them. So I think it's a great message. I'm conscious of time. We've got some great questions from the audience. So as we prepare to get into the Q&A, let me just add quickly into here that I think what I think is great about running these brand advertising webinars, and we always have them on various different topics, is that the things that come through is this lovely repetition of key themes. The key themes are making sure quality advertising and quality inventory is always a theme, making sure you do that, whether it be a creative challenge you're solving for or looking to minimize ad fraud, looking across your value chain and understanding it through the different pieces of transparency and the visibility you get now are, again, really important for almost any facet of brand advertising. So I think sometimes you look at it and you think, what do ad fraud and creativity and some of the other topics the brand advertising committee cover got in common? And it's these things. It's all about quality and transparency and working together as an industry. So let me jump into some of these questions around them. Okay.
While you're going through the questions, just wanted to add a thought on, because I see frameworks that my advertising agency clients would use, but we will then use internally as well to kind of go to protect and prevent against ad fraud, which is looking at the 3 pillars of tech and the processes and people. I think we spoke a lot about the tech, right? The companies need either their proprietary tech solutions or work with verification partners, but then also having the processes in place. So monitoring marketplaces globally if possible, because you have more data so you can identify these trends. But then also process when it comes to inventory onboarding and across teams, which brings us to the people part of it. We need a continuous feedback loop across engineering and product teams to really, so what I'm basically saying is it's not enough to just have a dashboard open and look at the IVT rate and be like, oh, it's, 1%, we're fine. I think it needs to go further than that. An organization really has to be a framework into, okay, so how are we handling this across teams, across the organization, and across global markets as well.
Nice. I'm just seeing if we've got any questions come in that we can put to the panel. I think Oliver, this first one may be a good one for you. So apart from IVT, what are the other types of fraud that SSPs need to keep in check and look out for?
Apart from IVT. So, yes, apart from IVT. So maybe reiterating on that, IVT is spoofing, is bots, as fake impressions, fake clicks, attribution depth, device spoofing, app spoofing, bundle spoofing, and all this. Apart from that, what are other types of fraud? So I think you will also talk about these topics in the when talking about other or about brand safety in the quality guide. But yeah, we see also MFAs on the rise, right? Where publishers are just multiplying the ad revenue, and it's also ending up in the wasted ad spend, because this content is of low quality, and the users that are going onto these MFAs are not really interested into the advertisement, which is like displayed all over the place. So this is one fraud that I can mention is going up there. Besides IVT.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. And I think another question actually is come in. It's and I think Annika, you might be well placed for this one. So MFA or MFAs are stated to take around 20% of media budgets. Do you consider MFA as ad fraud, or what's your perspective on MFAs?
That's a good question, and I think where we stand at the moment, how we define MFA, so we would use the IAB definition, so the industry's definition. At this stage, we wouldn't say that as ad fraud, but I'd like to see where we stand in like 10 months' time and see if that has changed. From our as I mentioned, at this moment on time, we wouldn't say it's fraud. MFAs are, like certain campaigns, certain advertisers are still okay with advertising against MFAs. Others are not. I think this is kind of a more fluid, dynamic topic where we as an industry have to see, okay, is there maybe a maximum amount? Like, could we put MFAs on a scale of like, this is still acceptable versus this is a site that's really just overwhelmingly serving ads where there's no purpose behind it anymore? So I wonder if we just then get into a field where we have the categorization, like a more specific categorization of MFAs. But I think as long as we're still in this in-between stage where some advertisers are fine with it, but others say from the get-go, I do not want this to be included, in my campaigns, we wouldn't necessarily say this is fraud, because it's not really coming from a fraudulent source, but it's definitely one of these like in between great topics where I'm curious to see where we stand on what our standpoint is, in a year's time.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things with anything with brand safety. It's all to do with the advertiser's appetite for risk or for safety and where they deem that. So it's really in the advertiser's hand. Oliver, have you got any thoughts on MFAs?
I think fraudsters are utilizing MFAs for doing that, or to increase their fraud revenue, right? So looking back at like 10 years ago, we had fraudsters utilizing WordPress, so to say, to put content out there or create content, creating websites en masse. Right now with generative AI, you can do it 100 times more, right? And you can have much more ad revenue, or take a piece of that cake over there. They are, yeah. It is
great. No, I think
Great.
you're right. Yeah, it's I guess with it, you know, when a practice, as you said before, you know, when there's a practice that is an opportunity, then that's when you see that replication and fraudsters look to use it. So I guess if MFAs continue to grow, then the opportunity gets bigger, and people might look to take advantage of that. Let me just check in our document if we've got any more questions that we can put to our esteemed panel. Can we do that? No, I don't think there's any more questions come through on here, but thank you so much for all of your questions and for your participation in the panel. I'll just pause. I don't know if Oliver or Annika have got any closing remarks before we hand over to Helen.
I mean, I guess it's just summarizing what both of us said. It's a matter of collaboration, really doing our due diligence so that we're not the ones contributing to those forecasted 11 billion that are being lost in ad fraud. So we just need to collectively work together to prevent that from happening.
Absolutely, a great message. And Oliver, anything from you?
Let's ensure we are ensuring for the advertisers to have a good return of ad spend by fighting ad fraud and collaborate all together. And again, tell anyone and everyone once they find fraud to share this information and to get rid of things fast before it's the wasted ad spend is increasing, right?
Yeah, perfect. Well, great messages to end on. Collaboration together as an industry to fight ad fraud, I think is a great message. So with that, I will thank our esteemed panel for their time and preparation for this, and throw back over to Helen.
Thank you so much. Echoing what Ryan just said, Annika and Oliver, that was so interesting, and I loved having all the questions from the audience. You know, this is exactly why we do these live, but really good to get your take on that, and wonderful moderation as always, Ryan. So just quickly, we just wanted to share some upcoming events that we have, just so that you can put these on your calendar. So the first one is our virtual programmatic day, which is taking place next week on June the 6th. So this is a series of panel discussions. We'll be discussing everything from the post third-party cookie, new era and privacy sandbox, to media qualities and algorithms, kind of very similar to this discussion. And then also attention as a kind of new measurement and metric. So this is free to register. We've got the QR code on there. We would love you to join us. One of our biggest virtual events that we do every year. And then finally, another webinar that's coming up is our Driving Diversity, Equity and Inclusion. So this is something we've been working with the Programmatic Trading Committee and, of course, Ryan with the Brand Advertising Committee. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers for this event. And as with this, it's going to be the opportunity to ask questions. It really is about kind of like just seeing the work that's being done at company level and across some of the different national IBs. So we look forward to seeing you there. Perfect. I was checking whether there was any more, but that's it. So yeah, thank you to everyone who has joined us live today, and of course to our wonderful panel. And please, if you're a member of IAB Europe, do get involved. We've got all of these opportunities, and we love bringing together our members to share their knowledge and expertise at webinars like this. So we hope to see you next week at our virtual programmatic day. Have a lovely afternoon. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.